name is Kristen Grunder from Grunderfully Delicious. Thank you so much for joining me in our Surfs Up Dude class. So I already took everything out of my little box, but I want to let you know, just give you a quick rundown of the class and let you know what's inside. So we have our icing, all of our cookies. I've already set those out. They're still wrapped. In this little packet here, I want to tell you what's in each of these. So we have extra piping bags. We don't need an extra bag for anything today, but this is just in case you cut your hole too big. I'm going to set that aside. A practice sheet I'm going to set in front of me. A little scribe tool here. Our picture of our cookies. I like to have this in front of me as just like a reference of what I want my cookies to look like. This here, be really careful with this. This is our rice paper flowers. If you get them wet, it will ruin it. So set it to where you're not going to get that wet. And then lastly, here we have a little paintbrush. And actually, not lastly, we also have some sanding sugar. So make sure that you have some scissors, a paper towel, and yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So real quick rundown of the class. We are going to practice on this practice sheet first, and then I'm going to show you step by step how to outline your cookies, how to fill them in. So if you want them to look like this, I highly recommend that you watch all the steps that I do. Pause as we go so that you can get caught up. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and start practicing. If you can go ahead and just watch this first part, especially if you're new, and then pause and go for it when you're ready. So we're going to go ahead and take our icing out, and as you're taking the icing out, I want you to give your bags a really good massage, especially this dark teal. Okay, it's a little bit of a thinner consistency, so give it just like a deep tissue massage. Also, if you notice, there's a lot of this bulky plastic. I like to cut that off. If you decide to cut it off, don't cut too close to the tape, leave about 2 inches, and that should give you a nice clean working area. We are going to practice with our orange icing, so make sure you massage that really well, excuse me, before you open up your bag. So the way that I like to cut my hole is, if you look at the orange bag, there's a little seam here. Do you guys see your seam? I always hold that seam pointed up toward the ceiling, and then I'm going to flat my tip with my finger. I am going to cut so tiny, because even the smallest cut, the icing's going to flow out pretty fast. So it's better to cut too small than too big. If you do cut your hole too big, we do have a few extra bags for you to rebag your icing if you need to. So seam is facing up. My goal is to get my orange icing as thick as this black line here. So I'm going to cut a teeny tiny hole straight across. Boink. And whenever I cut my hole, I always use my paper towel to kind of, if I had a paper towel, that would be nice. We'll just use this bag. I always squeeze the icing out just to get all the air out of the bag, and then I'm going to pinch the tape with my thumb and my pointer finger. Even though that tape is there, it's not going to prevent the icing from coming out the top, so you always want to keep that closed. And then I twist the pod so it's nice and tight. I'm going to rest the pod in my hand and squeeze with these 3 fingers. I'm holding my bag at a slight slant here. So I always start by touching my tip on the paper, squeeze a little bit, and then lift up immediately. I'm lifting about 1 inch high and just letting the icing fall. I'm not dragging my tip, and then when I get close to the end, I release the pressure, lay the line down. If your line's breaking, that means you're not squeezing hard enough, and if it's squiggly, either your hole is too small or you're squeezing too hard. So real quick, I just want to show you how high I hold my tip when I'm doing this. So I touch my tip to the paper, gently squeeze, lift, and again, I want my orange line to be as thick as this black line, and then I'm going to release the pressure, lay the line down, just like that. So let's switch this around. There we go. One other thing, I want you to make sure you keep your tip clean, so I'm often just giving this a little swipe. So go ahead and work on the lines, pause me, and then we'll finish up the practice sheet. To do the waves and the swirls, I start again by touching my tip just like before, squeeze, lift. This time I'm looking a little bit ahead of where I want the icing to fall, and I am going a little bit slower, which means I'm just squeezing slightly softer on the bag. When I'm ready to stop, release the pressure, lay it down, give my tip a little swipey swipe, tip touches here, lift, look a little bit ahead of where I want that icing to fall. So I'm looking at the black line below, making sure to breathe, and then when I'm ready to stop, release the pressure, lay that down. We do have some circles tonight, guys. We've got ears and we've got a little sun, so I want to make sure you practice. But again, just touch, lift, going even slower than before. So just squeezing just hard enough for that line to not break. Watching the icing fall. And then when I'm ready to stop, release the pressure, lay it down. Lastly, with the heart, what I'm trying to show you here is every point or edge or corner of your cookie, you want to put your tip down. So I have a starting point where I'm touching, then I'm lifting, watching where I want that icing to fall, and then my tip touches right here, okay? And then I start where I left off. Now you don't have to stop right there, just touch and then lift back up. This is how I get nice sharp edges and corners, and how I regain control of that icing. So once you're done with the practice sheet, go ahead and fold this in half and go ahead and pause this video so that we can go ahead and start our cookies when you are ready. Alrighty, good job finishing your practice sheet. If you're new and have not ever decorated cookies before, it is smart to just get a little bit of a feel of the icing. So now we're ready to start our cookies. So we'll start by outlining our cookies, and I like to outline these because it helps prevent the icing from spilling over the edge. I'm going to show you how to outline these two designs, our little mouse beach and our surfboard. When you guys, I'm going to show you on one cookie of each, but when you guys go to outline your cookies, you're going to outline both beaches, both surfboards. Go ahead and work on one design at a time before moving on to your next design. And you'll notice we have a featured flavor here. This is our coconut lime, and it is delicious. It's so good if you like coconut and limes. But let's go ahead and start this up. So really massage all of your bags well while you are watching me demo the outlining. So again, the seam is facing up, it's centered, I flatten the tip. Now before you cut this tip, just know that this is a thinner icing consistency than the orange, so it will come out faster. So just keep that in mind. You're going to want to cut just a touch smaller until you get a feel of the icing. I'm going to squeeze a little of the air out, and then here we go. So I start by touching my tip on the cookie. So I touch, and then I squeeze and lift. I'm going up the roller coaster, down the roller coaster, back up, and touch. So the top area is going to be where our water is. So I'm going to outline that completely in this dark teal. Lift, touch, just like we practiced. And when I go around the outside, I like to go as close to the edge of the cookie as I can go. And as long as you practice your circles, you should be good right here. Tip touches, lift again, touch, and lift. All the way around the cookie. Then I'm going to take my ivory. Now this is the only cookie that we're using ivory on. I know it's going to be a little hard to see the color differences, like this looks like the light pink also because of the lighting here, but just know the ivory is only going to be used for this beach cookie. I'm going to cut my tip. I mean, you're welcome to use it anywhere else, but that is what I'm doing here. So now I'm going to continue outlining. And I just messed up. Oh man, I'm so sad. It's okay though, because I have this little scribe tool. So whatever you mess up on or are not happy with, you just wipe it off Man, I wish I had a paper towel. That would be useful right now. I'll get one in a sec. So wipe that off. Just make sure there's no crusties left on your scribe tool. We don't like crusties anywhere. Lift up, touch. So that is with the ivory. Once both of the beach scenes are done, you're gonna move on to your surfboard. I'm gonna zoom in here. Psych, I'm not zooming in. We're going to start outlining this. So I like to start with the sun. That way all the lines will connect to that sun. So when you're outlining, the only thing I want you to remember is to outline the sun first. And this is where another circle is gonna come. So I'm gonna touch my tip right at the edge of the cookie, and then I lift. And I'm doing this about the size of a nickel, I would say, all the way to the edge. Okay, now I'm going to take my other colors. We're using light blue, dark blue, light pink, and dark pink. So I'm going to start with my light blue, and you can do any color you want on here. All of these consistencies will work for whatever you want to do. But I'm going to touch my tip right here, and we're going to do another wave like we did with our mouse cookie. So it's up, down, touch the sun, lift, touch, lift. There's our first section. Also, if you ever have a question about the color, because look, it looks white, doesn't look blue, but if you have a question about the color, whatever it's filled in with here on the picture is what I outlined with. Now I'm going to take my dark blue, touch and lift. I'm going to go down right here, go up, down. This is almost exactly the same motion as we did over here. There's our light blue or dark blue. Here comes our light pink. Where's my seam? There's my seam. Small hole. Okay, here's our light pink. Lifting, touch. This line's gonna go up, down, and then to the side of the surfboard. And then lastly, it's gonna be our dark pink. Small hole. And lift, touch, lift, touch. Alrighty, so now is your turn to go ahead and you're gonna outline both beaches, both surfboards, and then you can go ahead and come back here, and then I'm gonna show you how to fill these in. So pause the video, and yeah, I'll see you back in a bit. Now I'm gonna go ahead and fill in the cookies, but if I tried to fill this cookie in with this little hole, the icing would probably come out the top. So I'm going to cut my hole just a little bit more. Now I'm only cutting these holes bigger on this cookie. For my surfboard, I'm not going to cut any more holes bigger, okay? So just make note of that. So it's just for the beach cookie. So instead of lifting like we did when we outlined, I'm going to really, really hold that tape closed, twist the bag. I'm going to almost touch my tip to the cookie. I'm just above it, and as I squeeze, I kind of push the icing with the tip of my bag onto my outline. So I'm jiggling my tip in there, squeezing, and filling that in. And you do have to move pretty quickly here. If you notice, I'm not going to be leaving any holes, because if you are and you're having to spread the icing around a lot with your scribe tool, it usually means you didn't add enough icing. So I'm just filling this in. I think my icing's a little bit cold, so most of yours will just smooth out on its own. But if it's bumpy like this, we don't want this. This is ugly. We are going to take our scribe tool, gently stab the cookie, give it a little shaky shake. Then I'm going to, you can also just kind of jiggle the surface. So I'm not even barely in the icing with my scribe tool. The only thing is you just don't want to be spreading icing around a lot with this. If it's nice and puffy, it should smooth out for you. Then I'm going to take my ivory. I'm going to cut that hole bigger as well. And immediately fill this in right next to the blue. This line between the blue and the ivory is going to be hidden with our water that we're adding, our little foamy water that we're adding later. So don't be too concerned about what that's going to look like right there, because it's going to be covered. So I'm just filling this in. No holes. Give it a gentle jiggle. Now, before you move on to your next cookie, you want to make sure icing isn't spilling over. And if it is, you want to make sure that you right away with your scribe kind of swipe around the edge. If you go on to your next cookie and later notice the spillage, if you go to swipe it, it's going to crack your surface. So you need to catch that right away. And then when you're ready to go onto your surfboard, we are not cutting these holes bigger. So our light blue is the same size as when we outlined. It's a small area, so we don't need to really cut this more. So I'm just squeezing, holding my tip close, jiggling, and you really want to puff this up. But I really use the tip of my bag to kind of go over the outline to kind of hide that outline. Then I'm going to take my light pink and do the same. So if you notice, I'm not going to flood the darker colors right now, because I want this to keep its shape. I want the lines to look nice and crisp, and allowing these to crust, you'll be able to get nice, crisp, puffy, just more definition to this cookie. So I'm squeezing and jiggling my tip in there, slowly lifting it up to the surface. And that's how I like to smooth out small areas. So when you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and I'll show you how to outline your next two. So go ahead and work on that. Pause this video and then meet me back here. Alrighty, thanks for meeting me back here. So at this point, your beach cookies should be flooded, as well as the first two sections of your surfboard. Now we're going to outline our next two designs. So I want to make sure you watch this, because one of these two cookies is our challenge cookie. Can you guess which one? All right, so I'm going to outline the cup of this cookie first. So if you look, there's little points right here sticking out of the cookie. That's my guide where the cup is. So I'm touching. I just slightly curve it. It's barely noticeable, but just a ever so slightest curve. You guys hear that train behind me? That's one loud train. Lift, touch, lift, touch. Once those two are outlined, you're going to move on to your challenge cookie of the day, our hibiscus flower. So just like with the surfboard, where I outlined the sun first so the things could connect, we're going to outline the pistil first. All right, so this can either look like a pistil, like the center of this hibiscus flower, or it can look like something else. So you really want to make sure it's all about the curve. We're looking for a little bit of a curve here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the center of this cookie and make a U. And I'm not really lifting my tip up much there to create that U. And then I'm going to lift and curve to meet right there. Here's another lift and curve, and it kind of gets skinnier as you go to the top. Okay, and then I'm going to do kind of like little squiggles. So I'm almost pretty much dragging my tip on here and just making little squiggles. All right, that is your first move on the flower, and then you're going to create each petal. Now, this flower does look really cute blue as well, so if you want to do one flower blue, one flower pink, go ahead, but I want to show you how I use the shape of this cookie as my guide. So right here's one petal, here's another petal, so there's a total of 5 petals, and I'm using these 3 curves as my guide for each petal. When I'm looking at this, I start by looking at the corner, and then I'm going to bring my tip down all the way to that pistil and touch, and then a slight curve, and then outline each of these curves as the shape of the cookie, and then touch. And if you notice, I'm not touching this little pistil here. I'm leaving the tiniest amount of space. So that was with my dark pink. Now I'm going to take my light pink, looking right at this little corner, bring my tip straight down, just the ever so slightest curve, lift and touch, lift and touch. So see how now this petal is not touching the petal next to it. There's a bit of a space, and then I make my little lift and touch. Next one is our dark pink, so I'm looking right here, going down to the pistil, slight curve again. All these curves are in the same direction. Lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch. And then this one gets two little loopy things. And I'm holding my tip really close to the cookie as I do those loops. Here's another one. So looking there, going down, curve, lift and touch, lift and touch. And it's okay if these petals do end up touching each other, because we are going to fill these in separately. So if they do touch each other, it's not the end of the world. Now this last one is the only one that doesn't have that same curve, but instead it goes with the curve of the pistil. So I'm right up against, and I'm making my first curve of the cookie. That's the only one where you can't really see that shape. Then it's another one and another one. Touch. All right, so you can either pause it right now and start outlining these cookies, or you can watch how I fill these in and then go ahead and go back to where you were at. So once these are outlined, now you can cut the rest of your colors bigger. So I'm going to take my light blue, I'm going to cut that just a little bit more, and I'm going to fill in this right here, just the cup. And then when we go to our little flower, we're just going to do every other petal, just in case maybe one of yours is touching. That way they don't run into each other. Shake, 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 jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. So I'm just going to fill in the dark pink ones, petals right now. I did cut my pink hole just a little bit more. And I'm just gonna, you really want to focus on puffing these up, but as I go down where it's more narrow, I'm just gently releasing the pressure and dragging down. See how I did that? And to make these nice and puffy, I kind of insert my tip and kind of squeeze a little bit more and jiggle. Don't forget to check for spillage here, because this one likes to spill over. But I'm going to fill in all three of these dark pink petals. And then after this, I'm going to finish flooding my surfboard. So if you haven't finished the first two sections on your surfboard, you want to wait until these steps are done to fill the rest in, because again, we want that to crust. So I'm just filling this in. And then I'm going to come back to my surfboard here and finish flooding this. So if you need to see how I outline the flower again, definitely just hit rewind. But you guys can go ahead and go back to where you're at. So after you are done flooding your beach scene, you're done filling the first two sections of your surfboard, I want you to outline your cup. You're going to outline your hibiscus flower, start filling those all in, and then go back to your surfboard and fill in your last sections. Remember, you can cut your holes bigger after everything is outlined. But yeah, go ahead and go back to where you're at and I'll see you when you're caught up. All right, once your surfboard is completely flooded, you're gonna go back to your your beach cookie. So I forgot to mention, it is helpful if you have some sort of a fan to kind of crust these a little bit faster. If you don't have a fan, you definitely want to wait probably 10 minutes after you've gotten to this point before you start your next step. So we're going to go ahead and add the texture to our beach scene cookie. And to do that, I'm bringing my ivory back out, and I'm just going to squirt some icing. So it's ivory on top of ivory. I'm going to take my little paintbrush here, and just like I were gentle, like I'm gentle with a newborn baby, that is how gentle I want you to be tapping this icing. If you're noticing any crackage, then you need to wait a little bit longer for your base to crust, kind of like mine. You don't want to stay in one spot for too long. So I'm just barely tapping this to create texture. And if you didn't add enough icing on there, you can go back and add more. It's okay if you go a little bit on the blue area, because we're going to be covering that up. But I'm just gently tapping with my paintbrush is horizontal to the cookie. Tap, tap, tap. If you added too much and need to take any off, just swipe it with your paintbrush. But again, you want to make sure you have waited quite a bit of time to do this part. So I like to use a table fan, and then I can move on to this pretty immediately. But if you don't have one, I would wait 10 minutes or so, 5 to 10 minutes after you finish flooding your surfboard to do that. So I'm just going to let that dry. Tap, 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 gently, gently, gently. Near, 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 near. And then we'll set that one aside. We'll go back to our flower, and we are actually going to finish our very first cookie, which is this hibiscus flower. So as long as that's been about 3 minutes, you can come back and fill in the rest. So I'm taking my light pink and doing the same thing. And this will be our first finished cookie. Can you believe it? It's so cute. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. Puff that up. Another train. And then when you're done with that, you can grab your orange. And this one's a little bit thicker, so it's really good to go pretty puffy on this. It's not going to spill over. So I'm squeezing quite a bit out. And when I get here, I'm just kind of shaping it like I did that little outline there. So that's our first finished cookie. Once you're done with that, you can either pause it now, but once you're done with that, you can come over to this guy here, and we're gonna add our, make our snow cone. Now, some people did a snow cone that was like rainbow sherbet, so they did orange, dark pink, light pink, and it's so cute. I'm gonna do what's in the picture here. So this is a little different. This is more like our beach cookie where we're gonna flood each one, but we don't need to let our outline dry here. So I'm gonna start right in the middle of the cup. Lift up, slight curve, touch, curve, touch. And right away, I am going to fill this in. So we will be adding some sanding sugar to this. So I want to make sure that you do one cookie completely at a time. So don't go to your other second cookie and fill in the blue until this cookie is totally flooded. Because what you're going to do is, while you're flooding your second cookie, by the time you're done flooding your second cookie, you can add sanding sugar to your first cookie. If I add sanding sugar immediately after I flood this, the sanding sugar is heavy and it will make the icing spill over the edge, and it will also kind of sink into the cookie. So you want to wait a good minute or two. I would recommend 2 minutes before adding that sanding sugar. So that's why I say fill your first one in, then go to your second. Once you're done with your second one, your first one should be ready to add sanding sugar. And then you'll just wait a few more minutes to add your sanding sugar on your second. So now this is the light pink. So if you are easily distracted, however, I would just sit here and wait until that 2 minutes has passed, then add the sanding sugar. I do get very easily distracted. But another thing you can do is add your head of your mouse. So I'm going to touch my tip here and gently squeeze, 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 and create about a Skittle-sized dot. I want to let this dot crust before I add the ears, because if I add the ears right now, they will kind of run into each other and it will look like a blob. So I am just going to hold off on adding that. If you decide to do a different colored dot, all the other icings are looser, so you're going to want to go just slightly smaller of a dot because it will spread a little bit. So pretend it's been like 2 minutes. I'm going to take my sanding sugar, just drizzle that on. Drizzle, drizzle. Now it looks like a snow cone. So cute. We're not finished with this cookie yet. While we're letting this dry, this dot dry, we can go on to our surfboard. So pause this at any time. If you want to continue to watch, go ahead. But I'm going to come back to my surfboard and fill in my sun with our orange. And we can really puff that up because these other sections have crusted. This is where you're going to take out your little rice paper strip. I get these from the Cookie Monger, and I will link that in my profile here. But to take the paper out, you're just going to put your finger underneath and just pop them out. So I only need 2 for my cookies, 2 of each color, but you guys, there's an extra purple, an extra pink in case something happens or if you want to add it to another cookie. But instead of gluing this on with my icing just flat, I want to curve the petals. So I'm just kind of using my finger to curve this up just like this. So it's not laying flat. This is going to add more dimension. Then I'm going to take my orange and do the teeniest, tiniest little dot here. Then I'm going to take my little flower and just gently press that on. I'll do the same thing with my pink flower. Just curve those petals. And apply that. And then you can do a little dot of orange right in the middle. And we're done with our second cookie. Let's see up close. Isn't that so cute? I just love it. So here's our first finished cookie, number 1, our little hibiscus flower, our surfboard, and now we're going to move on to finishing our last 2 cookies. So I'm going to continue to let that crust, and once your sand has crusted, you can start the details on our beach cookie. So I am going to use the light pink to create my little foamy ocean. So I'm just going to go right in between the turquoise and the ivory. Now I've tried this with dark blue or with the light blue and it just looks better pink. But I'm just adding kind of like a thick line, maybe skipping a little bit. And then I'm going to do one line right here. Taking that brush, I'm just going to wipe it off because it's probably crusty now. So just make sure you get all the crust off. And then the same motion that you did the sand, you're going to do this with the light pink icing. So I'm doing like a lighter, I'm kind of spreading it out a little differently, more intentional than I was with the sand, but I'm just doing some lighter little pats with my brush as I go in the water section. And you can bring some down into the sand section, like thicker spots, and then lighter as we go up. And I'm gonna come here, some light spots. So it's better to have like a few little chunks of pink and then some spreading out. Oh, it's so cute. Then you can come back to your snow cone and add the ears. It's only got a crust for just a couple minutes before adding the ears, but now you're gonna see there's a little more dimension to that little mouse shape. It's not a mouse that starts with M, it's a different mouse, okay guys? And then lastly, we are going to add our starfish to our sand. Now, I like to do a couple practice runs on my paper towel first, but I basically just draw this out, so I'm almost dragging my tip on the cookie. And I'm actually going to draw a star, like I would with a pencil. So there's my star. I'll show you up close. There's my star, but it doesn't look like a starfish yet. All I need to do is take my tip and gently squeeze and push some icing around. It doesn't look like a blob, but it's got a little bit of point to it. You can also use that scribe tool to do that. I'm going to take my dark pink. I'll show you again. So it's dragging, making a star, and then filling it in. And you can take your scribe tool if you would like and just sort of accentuate the little points of the starfish. And there we go. There's our cookies. So cute. So let's transition here real quick. I just want to say thank you so much for coming. You're going to leave your cookies out either overnight or for the whole day. That shouldn't take that long to dry because it's so hot out. But I do realize some of you guys are out of state. So wait about 18 hours before placing them in like a Ziploc or a Tupperware. But I just want to say thank you so much for signing up for class. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your summer. I'll see you next time.